Welcome to the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. My name is Jin Ong and I'm your host. I practice as an osteopath and psychosomatic therapist and am fascinated by the mind-body connection and how your physical body is a manifestation of your emotional state. I help people get unstuck from their chronic pain and live the life they want, grounded in values and driven by purpose. My aim is to create awareness to the underlying emotions behind pain, injury, and disease in the body. Join me to learn more about the story of your body, what different issues may indicate, how to release emotions so that you can prevent problems, as well as inspiring pain story interviews. So welcome to today's podcast, Bianca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about what you do with yourself?
I am an NLP practitioner, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming for the people that have never heard of it before. And I'm also a life coach and I'm a lightning process practitioner.
Great.
A whole lot of stuff.
So what do you help people with?
So typically I see a lot of my clients who are stuck with chronic conditions. So that can be anything mental or physical, a lot of anxiety, depression, chronic pain, which I experience myself, chronic fatigue, autoimmune disorders, anything where people just feel like they haven't kind of had that breakthrough. I help them sort of look at their thoughts and what's going on internally to see if we can shift some of the stuff.
Oh, cool. And what about the lightning process? What's that?
So the lightning process is a 3-day training, and it's all about teaching people how the mind and the body interact. So we look at thought processes, we look at a lot of postural, how posture can influence our health. We look at breathing, we look at basically interrupting certain neural pathways that have become sort of stuck unconsciously. And then I help people to sort of retrain their neural pathways, to directing them in a way that promotes health, essentially. So, in essence, it's looking at how the mind and the body interact and then calming the nervous system and sort of noticing our patterns, which a lot of clients have massive breakthroughs with their chronic conditions.
Can you talk a little bit about conditioning and belief patterns? Because I think that's
so this is a big one. Yeah, definitely. So how I see things in my work is that we unconsciously fire certain pathways all of the time, and this can be mental thoughts, and it can also be things that are getting stuck in our body, or the way our body is conditioned to our nervous system being in a certain state. So, obviously with beliefs and things like that, I personally think that a lot of them are formed at a really young age. And it's just our way of piecing the world together, making sense of the world. We kind of take these beliefs on and these ways of operating, and a lot of us actually just carry on acting out, for a lot of our life until we become aware of maybe how it's getting us stuck. That's things such as perfectionism, that kind of thing. They show up a lot in my clients because they are the ones that have set these high expectations, really fast thinkers, really intelligent people, but often people that can get stuck in their body, and then the mind kind of can jump in and make things even harder to get out of when you are feeling unwell or feeling stuck. That makes sense. Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to parents, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. So, parents, culture, the media, I just think constantly it's so unconscious. And, if you actually think about it, we are constantly being bombarded with different ways of, how we should act, how we should think. It's a constant kind of uncovering of where stuff comes from and maybe how we'd love to feel instead, or what belief we'd like to take on instead. But it takes some work and it takes some practice and reflection, definitely.
Could you share an example of maybe someone that you've seen in the past where you've had a really massive breakthrough, what they came in for and how you worked with them?
So I work quite a lot with chronic fatigue, and in terms, this isn't so much the belief, but this might be how they get stuck. So something like chronic fatigue, a lot of the time happens, or post-viral fatigue happens after a virus such as glandular fever. And there is, a 3-month period where they will have fatigue, their body's getting back up and running. But for a lot of my clients, this fatigue lasts, way longer than it should. Like, we're talking years, 10, 15, 20 years, they're just completely stuck. So how I view that is that, of course, the fatigue is a physical thing, but for whatever reason, their body's being kind of gone into this fight or flight response. And on top of that, the fear of not getting well, the fear of, patterns or beliefs such as having to be perfect, having to carry the load, having to worry about health, all these other things create more of a stress response in the body. And that's where it's really hard for our body to let go and just bounce back and come back to balance. So typically with a client like that, we'd work on not necessarily the fatigue as such, but all of the patterns that are potentially running in the background, and that fear about not getting well and the anxiety, teaching them a lot about their posture and how we can send signals to our brain through our body, because the way we hold our body is so important. And also a lot about focusing on the language that we're using, and that is to ourselves, but it's also kind of the language we're using and how that's firing up different pathways in our brain. So sometimes even teaching them the language alone has a massive shift, because instead of thinking, I don't want to feel like this, I don't want to feel fatigued, we're actually changing it to what they want. And they want energy, they want vitality. On top of that, we do a lot on visualizations. So we're moving away from maybe the past and that stuck feeling into the future, and really getting in touch with the feeling of what they want, how they want to feel, and really connecting into that. So yeah, it's a whole lot of stuff when a client comes in. Definitely is a focus on beliefs and patterns that have been learnt along the way, 100% learnt. However, we're kind of also looking at forward and seeing how they want to feel, and kind of teaching people to step into this new identity. And the body responds so quickly, so quickly. So, some clients have massive changes over just 3 days. Sometimes it takes a few more weeks. But it's retraining the brain. So through my work, I do teach a set of tools that my clients implement themselves, rather than me just getting them well. They have to put in some work as well.
Yeah, that's good. I find the biggest language issues that come up for me is people that say, when you feel really fatigued, I'm like, no, it's actually you, and it sounds really harsh, but you need to own it, and you say, when I feel fatigued. Is that something that you teach people?
So it's interesting. It's definitely teaching people to look at what they're saying and how they can actually be more specific with the way they're saying it too. Because what we do is we quite often generalize, and our body's always listening. So we say stuff like, I used to say this, I'm always in pain, 24/7, everywhere hurts. And so what I get to sort of teach my clients is looking at times when you're actually not in pain, and kind of starting to use our language more effectively. So you might say, like, I'm in pain when I'm doing this exercise, which is shortening it, which kind of takes the fear away a little bit less, because you're starting to recognize that there might be times when you actually feel okay, or your body is working for you. So it's teaching people to really take care of what they're saying to their body, and come back to the times when it is an issue, and looking at times when their bodies work really well for them. And also in terms of language, just being really careful with our labels and what label we give ourselves. So in the lightning process, I teach my clients a verb called the do, which is DU. And essentially, instead of saying like, I have anxiety, I would teach them to say like, I'm doing anxiety, which essentially, there's a whole lot to it, but it takes away the label and it kind of gives you a sense of, it might be happening at that moment, but it's not maybe happening when you're asleep or the moment you wake up. So it's just giving the clients back some power really, and getting them to think about the way that they're talking to themselves and in conversation.
Yeah.
How important.
People find it a bit awkward. Language.
Oh, it is. It can be really difficult because it's not a normal way of speaking when I'm teaching these little things that wake up our neural pathways. But as people get into making change and they see their bodies starting to respond, it does become easier. And a lot of it is inside our own head. So we have to. Yes, it happens in conversation. We say all these things to ourselves about how we have low self-esteem, this and that, but you can start to do it in your own head and it starts to wake yourself up a little bit. It does become easier. It's just, again, it's like training, really.
Yeah. And it's important to be aware of what they don't want or how they feel, and then to be able to flip it around.
Oh, absolutely. It redirects our brain in like a different way. So when I had pain, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon, but I was honestly, my whole head was just filled up with language about pain, how certain symptoms would feel, how I didn't want to feel. So a lot of the lightning process and the work I do is really based around getting clients to think about what they want. So the opposite of pain is actually comfort. So we start to kind of fire up those signals in our brain, and our brain is literally or unconsciously redirected thinking about comfort, unconsciously without us realizing. It's starting to get images of when we were comfortable or how comfort would look. So words are powerful, really, really powerful.
Oh, they are for sure. And what about...
I can talk about this all day though. I don't want to bore you.
Oh no, it's great. So interesting. And I think there's a lot of takeaways for people already listening to be aware of their language and how they can flip it around themselves. Absolutely. And if they're really struggling because they have been in pain or discomfort or negative thought patterns for such a long time, at least they know who they can seek help from now.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest thing I would do is think of the opposite of what you don't want. So, for example, pain, you actually want comfort, and start to rate if you feel something in your body, start to rate it on a comfort scale. Just be like, I'm 2 out of 10 on comfort. You could still be in a lot of pain, but just start to do that and see how it feels. Yeah.
Is it a little bit like affirmations?
Kind of. You're just sort of moving your brain away from focusing on the pain, and it's kind of starting to redirect. And pain, for someone with pain, has a fear attached to it. So the more we can kind of shift away from that fear, you'll know this as well, the faster your body can kind of have the chance to bounce back up. Yeah,
because sometimes the things that we fear aren't even real.
It's just our body gets a bit stuck on hypervigilance. And
can you give us some tips on posture?
As you say it, I'm like pulling my shoulders back. So posture is really important because obviously thoughts are important in terms of what we're thinking has an effect on our body, but what our body is showing and how we hold it has a massive effect on what our brain is hearing and what neural pathways are fired. So we know this kind of instinctively, if you're crouched over and your shoulders are forward, you're maybe in like a lower position, you feel really vulnerable. And, we all know someone who walks in the room who's like looking like Beyonce, just strutting on in there. And that they are, even if they don't feel confident within, they look confident and their body is projecting that. So how that kind of comes into my work is over time, and you will 100% agree with this, I'm sure, our bodies sort of take on certain shapes. And we're quite unaware of this because, you know, if you have been dealing with depression over a long period of time, you are naturally going to be a little bit more sort of shut over your heart. So just letting people really become aware and getting them to have the chance when they're with me to practice new body postures is so liberating. And it just, you are sending your brain different signals. Like, it's safe if you're sending it, you're sort of in an open posture, it is sending that safe signal. And it also comes with our voice as well. So naturally, if we are feeling anxious, we are going to talk fast and we're going to talk quite high. So again, it's just playing around with our voice, how fast we're talking, which is something that I still catch myself. But just playing around with it and kind of thinking, what is this sending to my body? What is this signal from my body sending to my brain? It's quite powerful.
Yeah, the body postures are really interesting. And I often say to people, this is the intuitive sense that we all have in us to know when something's not right with someone, and to maybe take that next step to ask them how they are, and to really ask them how they are, not just a passing comment.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I completely agree.
And also changing body posture can be as uncomfortable as changing your language, but it's just to give it a go and see what happens, what changes you notice.
Yeah, and it's practice as well, you know, because I'm teaching a set of tools, like I said, it's consistently using the self-coaching tools I use or I give to my clients. So once you start like embodying a certain posture or breathing differently or changing your language, it does feel weird at the start. Like, it feels really difficult, but it's like anything, once you've done it a few times, it's kind of, it's through neuroplasticity, which maybe some of you have heard of, which is the way our brain kind of retrains itself once we use a certain pathway. It becomes our new autopilot. You know, we can get into these states or this body posture a lot easier. Like you said, sometimes it takes someone opening up about something and getting it off their chest. But again, with practice, I think it does become a lot easier to embody.
Yeah, that's the key postures. To keep going with it. A lot of people, after a few weeks, they go, right, I feel amazing. And then they just drop off all of those practices. And I often say, well, instead of practicing it 5 to 7 times a week, drop down to maybe doing it 3 times or once or twice a week. But it's having that toolkit.
Yeah, to go back to. Yeah. And it is just discipline. Like, I totally know. I think small promises to yourself are better than anything, because we, you know, just little tiny things each day. Staying disciplined, staying consistent is what gets you the results, I think.
Yeah, great. Okay, so can you go into, how did you get into all this NLP writing process?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange area to be in, but I had my own story. So, it's a while ago now, back in, 2011, I developed chronic pelvic pain. Now, there is still no cause, 100% reason why I developed it. I sort of had UTI-like symptoms, one day, which if anyone's had a UTI before, you know, they stick around for a few days and they disappear.
That's a urinary tract infection.
Yeah. So, or like a thrush infection, all kind of in that same area. So obviously I had that, but I also had a few kind of like the burny sensation and the rest of it. Went to the doctors, tried a few medications, nothing happened. So I kind of, with that comes a whole lot of anxiety, like what's going on with my body. And long story short, it went on for about 2 to 3 years. You know, I had constant kind of burning, unprovoked kind of pain in like my vulval, urinary region. They thought it might have been endometriosis at one stage. So I had a operation to check if it was, and it wasn't. So I just had a whole lot of pelvic pain essentially, and I spent about 3 years just going around looking for answers.
And so what were the names for the pelvic pain? I know that we don't give labels, but
Yeah,
you
no,
just can
no,
relate to
no,
it.
no.
Because I do know quite a few people who experience these conditions.
Yeah. So quite early on, I think my first, like, trying to get answers, firstly, I went to the gynecologist because that was their area, that was their forte. And I was diagnosed with unprovoked vulvodynia. So essentially that is just pain in the vulval, again, that whole region, even further up in the vulva, and unprovoked. So there was no reason, it just was there. It was just
And
there.
was it pain just like on the outside of your genital area or like around your vagina, inside your
Yeah,
vagina?
it was mostly around the outside, even sometimes further up towards, like, as if I did have period pain. So it was that kind of all the way up the pubic bone, and then mostly on the outside of my vulval area was the pain, and it would shift a little bit. Occasionally it kind of felt like a burning sensation, as if you still had like a UTI or a thrush infection. And then kind of sometimes it was more of a stabbing pain, sometimes it was an ache. It really would, and even thinking about it now, because it's been so long since I've experienced it, I find it quite hard to think about it. But at the time, yeah, it was a horrible pain, and it is not a nice region to have pain, especially when you're a 19-year-old girl, and that sort of stuff is still not so much talked about. But definitely I didn't feel that comfortable talking to people about it.
Yeah. And because it can cause painful intercourse as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, intercourse, even, using tampons, your relationships, the relationship you have with yourself, obviously it's quite an intimate area, so it can have a real effect. But yeah, it would be constant, but there were some times where it would be more painful than others. And it seemed at the time quite random. It was always, I always felt really sore when I was at work for some reason. That could have been a sign. But yeah, it was quite a constant kind of burn, I would say.
And how did you manage the pain, or what was suggested to you?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, I've got a list of people I saw here. I went to what have I got here? I went to obviously gynecologist, the pain clinic, urologist, even a dermatologist, because I thought that might help. That was all sort of the specialist area, and a few doctors. And I was offered amitriptyline, which is a antidepressant, which is meant to help block the pain pathways. I did take that, however, it didn't really do much for me personally. Also gabapentin, which is a antipsychotic, I think. It's used for people with epilepsy, and again, to do with the pain pathways.
Yeah, I think it affects the nerves.
The nerves, yeah.
So nerve pain.
I didn't try that for long. I wasn't that keen on taking stuff. Not that I have anything against it. It's just I thought it wasn't going to work for me. I also was offered a steroid cream. And in terms of the pain, I mean, it's again a delicate region, so there's only so much you can do. Dilators from a physio, and yeah, other than that, it was just trying different creams and lotions and that kind of thing that, to be honest, didn't give me a lot of relief, because I couldn't quite tell if it was internal or external. It was very hard to decipher it.
Yeah. And you did see a pelvic floor physio as well?
Yeah, I did. Towards the end of the two, when I was experiencing it, I came across a pelvic floor physiotherapist quite late in the piece. She really helped me, actually. She was working more on the internal muscles that would have seized up, along the way of me being in pain. Everything was quite sort of, I guess, you're naturally clenching a lot of the time. And she really helped just remind me that it was a really common thing for people to experience. And although there was nothing that was helping me too much at the time, that people had success in getting well. So I think anyone that I found that really gave me that kind of hope, it really resonated with, and my body did a little kind of respond when I was working with her to a degree.
Yeah.
Didn't get me well, but I felt really comfortable and really good with the progress I made. Yeah.
Because a lot of people would be too embarrassed to even go to the doctor or start the process of trying to work out what's going on.
I know.
Does the interstitial cystitis come into there as well?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, when I went to the urologist, they diagnosed me with that on top of it. So to be honest, it all kind of felt the same. I already assumed I had that because there were small kind of days, a few days occasionally where I would get that sensation where I needed to go to the pee a lot, and then that would disappear and that would go away for like another 6 months and come back. So in the background I always thought, maybe it's in your urinary tract. There's so many different specialists for different areas in that region, so it was quite hard kind of getting all these different diagnoses and not really knowing where the issue was starting. I was told it might even be like nerve damage, which really made me feel quite stuck, because I thought, how is it nerve damage if nothing's happened down there? But obviously I was constantly getting tested for things, and it was always clear. It was always like, it's perfect. There's nothing wrong. It must be in your head.
Yeah, right. That must be really frustrating. So what did they tell you to do then?
Yeah, literally it was just try this, see how you go. We've kind of done all we can to help, and you might have to live with this for the rest of your life. There was one person, I can't remember who it was, but they offered me a nerve block, and I was literally in that much pain that I was almost willing to, my mum wasn't so happy, but take a nerve block at 19 just to get rid of this constant pain that I had. It didn't get to that point because I found a way out before then, but that's quite powerful stuff, and I was willing to potentially go down that route. So other than that, it was just trial and error really, and a bit of feeling a bit disempowered, to be honest.
Yeah. And were you able to continue work throughout this?
Yeah, so I was at uni, I was working. Honestly, if you'd seen me, I would have looked just like your normal 19-year-old girl going out partying. Obviously, on the inside, I was hiding a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting, and I find that with my clients as well. Chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Yes, there are people that are housebound or bedbound, but a lot of people are just walking around with it and putting on a brave face. So there were things that felt really uncomfortable for me. A lot of exercise after a while really felt uncomfortable. Standing at work for long, that used to be really hard for me. Getting home, I just felt really sore. But yeah, I would just grin and bear it like a lot of people do. And obviously that brings a whole lot of other emotions as well.
Yeah. And you had a couple of other things affect your body as well, was the fibromyalgia and central sensitization. Do you want to go into that a bit?
Yeah. So when I was looking for answers, I ended up going to a pain clinic. Again, it seems like a while ago now, but I was also sort of diagnosed with central sensitization syndrome. Now, how the specialist sort of described it was that my body was just stuck on hypervigilant mode, and it kind of was an umbrella term for fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, all of these conditions where people just don't get answers essentially. So yeah, that diagnosis to me it didn't really change much. But a few years into my pain journey, I did start having kind of other symptoms, and that was mainly in my extremities, so on my arm, and my fingers, and in my toes and my feet. But also, I would get like pins and needle sensations. They would come and go. I would get like achy joints, weakness, kind of, a whole lot of stuff. Like I'd feel quite dizzy. I would faint. I had fainted a few times over the years, but just with some sensations that would make me feel really faint. This didn't last for long. This was only really a few months before I started getting well, thank God. But yeah, that was when things started sort of becoming more widespread. The pelvic pain had actually sort of disappeared, to be honest, when this other stuff started happening around my body. Don't know if it's because I had to focus on different parts of my body, but it was a whole lot of different symptoms, which would be classed under fibromyalgia.
Yeah, fibromyalgia is a frustrating diagnosis because they call it a diagnosis of exclusion. Well, you're in pain, we've tried everything else and we can't diagnose you with anything, so we'll call it fibromyalgia. And then, unfortunately, as you're saying, just to be careful when we label ourselves, because some people will just say, I've got fibromyalgia and there is no cure for it, or there is no relief, but you're going to share a bit about how you came out of it.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a few practitioners that will work with people. I do find it quite challenging because people are often, it's been a journey to get to that point of that discomfort in their body. So there are a lot of belief systems and languaging that has to be worked on.
Yeah,
it's quite an effort. And the central sensitization, my understanding is when you do experience pain, different areas of the brain start to light up and the body starts to become more sensitive to normal stimulus, or it will start to behave in a completely different way. And some people can get it in a different body part or all over their body. So even for some people, going in to hug them creates so much fear, or there's people who just avoid people because they don't want them to touch them because they're in so much pain. But you often don't see that unless someone shares that with you, and then you just think, what's wrong with that person? They're just avoiding everyone.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes, you live in fear, essentially. Like you said, it becomes more and more, and your body kind of does get more and more in pain as well.
Yeah.
It can do,
And so the next question, it ties in a little bit about how did you find something that helps you, and what was the trigger in your mind?
This is it is good because I no longer live in pain. So just before we start that, so what happened was I had been going around in circles for a few years. The pelvic floor physiotherapist actually suggested that I look into the lightning process, which is what I now teach. I sort of put that, I had no idea what it was. I just wrote it off because I was like, this pain is not in my head. Like she said, go read this book. I thought, no, I don't have time for that. So I didn't. And another 6 months had passed. What was that?
What book was it?
It was the book about the lightning process.
Okay.
It's now an audio, but I didn't do it. And anyway, so I because I was sort of feeling this widespread pain. I didn't mention, but I was in the city for the Christchurch earthquakes. I was outside one of the buildings that came down. So I did have quite a traumatic experience, and it's something that I hadn't really dealt with over the years, because like a lot of people in Christchurch, you're still living through the aftershock, you're still living in the fear. And that was just kind of how it went. So I decided to go get some earthquake counselling, which is free. And I went along, and not going for my pain or anything, and I just had a massive cry. I got it all off my chest, and it felt really, really good. And so I did that, and then I noticed kind of a little bit that my pain sort of shifted. It was still there, but it just felt like a massive valve had been released. And this counsellor said, you should look into NLP. This lady, she recommended a lady who had a few hours of earthquake trauma left. So I went along to this NLP practitioner, and it was funny because she had one more session left funded. So I got the last session. It was about 4 years down the track. And I went along saying, I've been sent here. I don't even know what I'm doing here, but apparently I've got some trauma to work through. And she worked with me did a few NLP techniques, and it really helped for me. And she said, is there anything else you want to talk about? I said, well, I'm living in chronic pain constantly. This is even ruining my life more than what happened with the earthquakes. And she said, do you think that the two could be related? And I just had one of those moments, and I'd never ever put two and two together, which seems crazy because it had been such a long time, but no one had ever asked me what was going on, or anything about my emotions really as I was going through to see people. And yeah, that was a moment where I thought maybe there's something to this. She was really confident that once we dealt with some of the stuff, my pain could ease. And as we worked together, it did. And then I had that week, actually, I booked in with the lightning process. A few months later, I ended up going up to Auckland to do the lightning process. I was already feeling quite well before I did the lightning process, but once I'd done the lightning process training, it just all made sense about how my body had become stuck through probably my earthquake experience, but also that perfectionism I had in myself, I guess my coping mechanisms, and just little things. And then like I said, on top of that, I had a big trauma. My body was probably trying to respond in a certain way, and my mind took over. And then obviously in the pelvic region, you might be able to tell me more, but there potentially to do with relationships in my past as well, stuff younger relationships. But yeah, it all kind of made sense. And once I learned that I could retrain my nervous system and look at my thoughts, which I had an influence over, my body started responding quite quickly.
Over what period of time did you notice a positive shift?
Yeah, I'd say over the first month from working with the NLP practitioner, I've noticed a significant shift in my pain. And then with the lightning process, that was like the final bit where I was like, no, I know this isn't coming back. I know I have tools to interrupt these pain pathways. I know I can change my thoughts. I have control over certain things. It just really changed the way I thought about my health and my influence in my health. So I would say within 2 months, I was like back on track completely.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
Yeah. I was young, so I think things just, came in and I took it all on board. I think sometimes when we've been stuck in for a longer period of time, or we have all these other beliefs, it can seem a little bit harder to change, but I was so ready and so willing to just listen to the people who had been there before me. And
yeah. Can you talk me through a couple of things that NLP practitioner gave you, and then the lightning process as well, specific to you?
Yeah. So she did hypnotherapy as well. So the first thing I did was get up on the bed, and she would just take me through really nice, calm hypnotherapy. And, I felt in my body that it was just going into that relaxed state, which I had not felt in a long time. In terms of we didn't work too much on the pain, but in terms of the earthquake stuff, we did what's called trauma cure, which I now do with some of my clients. And it's really about changing the way the memory was stored in our brain. So kind of jumbling it up with, we do revisit the memory, but we're playing it in a dissociated way. And we're jumbling it up to re-experience it from a distance, but with qualities we wish we had. So strength, maybe even a bit of humor, and we can kind of change the memory in our head a little bit, and calmness. So you're almost finishing off, you're getting out of that fight or flight response, because in a traumatic situation, quite often we just freeze and we don't finish the cycle.
Yes.
So she helped me piece it together, and to be honest, once I'd walked away, it didn't feel like I'd had a massive shift, but I had. And that again, it's at an unconscious level where you're not like, oh my gosh, it's completely changed. It's just that you notice that things didn't trigger this fear response in my body as much. And with the pain, it was more about my beliefs around pain, because she was the first person that said, you don't have to live with this. And I remember hearing that thinking, are you sure? Do you know what I'm experiencing? And she said, no, like, we're going to work through it. She was really positive. And just finding a practitioner that said that to me in itself was such a relief, you just feel so at ease. It was a lot about our language because of NLP, about what I was saying to myself, definitely about the diagnosis and taking some of the shock off every time I'd heard that I'd have to live with it. That kind of thing.
I really like how you just went into when we experience trauma that often we will freeze, and then we never get that opportunity to do what we really wanted to. And people often cycle in their brain of, I wish I had done this, or even with arguments, I wish I had said this or said that. So I love the whole revisiting and rewriting the story. And it's not just the verbal dialogue, it's the action, the physical action as well, almost reliving that. And quite often after trauma, the body will want to release on a physical level, so trembling or shaking, and then some people feel, oh, I'm out of control, or what are people going to think of me? So I'll go to the doctor and I'll go get anti-anxiety meds and I'll just suppress all of this physical discharge, but then it shifts somewhere else in the body to tell you, hey, I need to get out. So the verbal, the emotional, even, the pees, poos and vomit that gets suppressed because people don't want to vomit in front of someone. And the physical discharge as well that needs to come out. So that's really good that you touched on that. What about the lightning process for you? What is it? What was the thing that you had to go through in that?
Do you know what I still find, even as a practitioner, I find it hard to describe. There's no secrecy about the lightning process either. It's just that we cover so much in the 3 days that it is quite hard to, it's really a personal transformation journey. I mean, you start at your beliefs and the core of whether you think you can get well. Within the lightning process, like I teach now, there's a set of tools and they're based around visualization, self-coaching. So you're up, you're standing up when you do these. Coaching yourself and saying what you want instead of what you don't want. So it's really about interrupting that pathway every time you do this self-coaching process, which could be, say, 10 to 50 times a day at the start. Every time you do this, you are breaking that fear pattern. You're breaking that thought about, is this pain going to last forever? And if you've had it for a while, that is constant, that fear.
So what was one that you went through?
One pattern would be, if I felt the physical pain, I would do the lightning process to get myself into a calm state. So I'd have to really embody what a calm person would look like, or a trusting state is another example. I would coach myself, if everyone else can do this, if other people can shift their pain, you can too. I would tell my brain what I actually want. I want to feel completely comfortable and calm, rather than the usual loop, which would be, don't want to be in pain, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get well? All of that. I've literally stopped that pathway in its track. And then at the end of the process, we go back to a really nice memory where our body just felt like it was doing what it needs to do perfectly, or we can go into the future and see ourselves, literally as if you were there, being really calm, comfortable, interacting, not, being just how you want to see yourself. And that in itself is priming the brain. So it's redirecting that pathway into sort of like, in a weird way, it is law of attraction, but kind of refocusing. It might even be like, you could use the lightning process if you had lots of stuff to release and you felt like you couldn't open up. You could actually just use it to get into a state of being okay to have a big cry, being okay to get angry. it's not about positive thinking. It's more about getting back in touch with what we really want and how we best move forward.
Yes.
So yeah, I was doing it a lot for calm and comfort, getting into those states, embodying those states, and just being, the main thing is really becoming aware of our thoughts and our patterns and stopping them in their track when they are in that stuck cycle, that autopilot that's just constant. It didn't start like that. It's happened over time, and you end up having the same thoughts come up constantly. So it was just really about being disciplined and just stopping any of that fear that got in the way and redirecting my brain consistently until I started gaining that trust. And when you've got a posture that's embodying like a calm person, your body, your stress hormones are lowering. So it gives your body that chance to kind of have a breather, and the biochemistry in your body does shift.
Yeah. I think the most basic one people relate to is just smiling, even when you're unhappy, that you'll release those happy endorphins.
Yeah,
happy
definitely.
hormones.
Happy hormones, yeah.
Okay, and now you're quite aware of the emotional stuff, and you just touched on pelvis, and we had spoken in the past about relationships. So yeah, the hips and pelvis for me do govern a lot of emotions around our relationships in life with our parents, our siblings, our previous partners, our current partner and relationships, and then also around desires to have children, or sometimes inability to have children when there's fertility issues. So you spoke a little bit about previous relationships when you were younger. Are you happy to go into that if there's anything there?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing major really. I'd just say what would probably come up, you saying that, would just be boundaries really. And I think I've worked hard to develop boundaries over time, but naturally I was probably more someone who was a people pleaser back when I was a little bit younger. So not so much like that now. I think we all can have that tendency to slip into that. But yeah, just when you're young, I mean, teenage years, and you're kind of, boys can be young and dumb. And I think, again, letting myself be in those positions the boundaries develop as you get older. But that would be what would come up, I'd say, just people pleasing and not putting myself first, even at that age. Yeah.
And then what about anything that was going on with parents at the time as well? What else was happening in your life?
Yeah, I mean, with parents, I wouldn't say anything comes up majorly. I really did have a good, happy childhood and that kind of thing. But I guess it is at an age where, was 18, 19, is at an age where you're kind of becoming your own. So it's a difficult age, and I think relationships change quite a lot when you're growing up and moving out of home and that kind of thing. But nothing majorly comes up. I think more with myself as well. It was the age where I was starting to finally find my feet, and then that happened, so it was quite difficult. But yeah, nothing so much. Maybe friends in terms of, again, boundaries and that kind of thing. Not so much with parents, I don't think.
Yeah. Was there some stuff going on with your mum while you were trying to heal through all of this?
Mum was diagnosed with bowel cancer in November. But she back then, everything was pretty normal. I did move away to university when the earthquakes happened. I ended up going to Adelaide to do a semester over there with a lot of other people from Christchurch. So again, that was a bit of a shift in the dynamics and that kind of thing. But
yeah. How have you found the journey with your mum and her bowel cancer diagnosis?
Yeah, it has been a bit of it still is a shock. I don't think you ever get over the shock of cancer and someone close to you having it. However, my mum has, again, based on the stuff I know, I think I have been able to help in a way. You take the diagnosis, but you don't take the prognosis. And my mum is really actively gotten the information that she feels is going to be beneficial to her journey. So not necessarily timelines or anything like that. And she had really good results with her first round, after her first round of chemo. She's not on any treatment at the moment, but just little wins like that, I really think comes down to her putting in a lot of emotional, having a lot of support emotionally from certain people who have been through the journey themselves, doing a lot of alternative things with, conventional treatments as well. But I think opening up to, being open-minded and being able to look at all aspects of yourself, including old stuff that maybe hasn't been opened up, I think has, in my personal opinion, and hers too, has really helped her stay well. Like, she's feeling well at the moment. And I think that does come down to a lot of hard work, but a lot of leaving nothing unturned.
Right. And how do you think people should approach someone in chronic pain? What do you think would be helpful? Because I think sometimes people
send them to me. No, I'm kidding. It is hard. It is a hard thing to live with.
What do you wish people had have said to you or done for you in that time?
You know what? I think you've got to be in the right frame of mind to hear things as well, because I was studying psychology at the time I had pain, and I was this area, being open to emotions, being open to other things that influence your health, I would have shut down quite quickly, because when you are in pain, it's hard to hear that it could be anything other than physical, like a physical injury or something. So first of all, I'd say just be open. There's so much out there. There's new apps like Curable. There's so many people that want to help. Things are changing quite quickly. I would say it comes back to take the diagnosis, but do not take the prognosis.
Mm-hmm.
No one should have to live in constant chronic pain. And I've seen time and time again with my clients that you can get shifts, even if the pain does not go away completely straight away. There are shifts. Your body is trying to send you a message, and there are ways of getting help. If you can find the right person that resonates with you, your body has the ability to heal and to be comfortable.
Yeah. What would you say to practitioners who are dealing with people with chronic pain? Because thankfully you came across someone who gave you some hope, but then there were others who told you to just live with it. So what would be your message to the practitioners out there dealing with someone with chronic pain?
Please be careful with what you say to people, especially young people. What we hear can penetrate our beliefs about ourselves very easily. And that goes for people knowing that maybe people such as doctors and physio specialists, they don't know everything. They never said they do know everything, but again, it comes down to what you want to take on and what you choose to believe. So both ways. For practitioners, there are new things coming out that I'm sure a lot of people would really be wanting to get their hands on, like courses like yours where they can actually learn how to implement this sort of thing into their work, and just, again, be open-minded to potential causes. Go easy with people who are who have chronic illness, but even posing certain questions and just letting people think about it themselves can have a massive effect on someone's symptoms, reflecting, and just for the client or the patient just to even think, how might this be applicable to me, or what might be going on behind the scenes, still can start the kind of journey in this direction, I think.
Yeah.
And language as well, which I'm more than happy, that is on my list of things to do, is to help practitioners word things better. I think it has a huge effect on what patients and clients take away. And the power of language, again, it's just, it is really important.
Yeah. Great. And is there anything else that you want to share about your story, the emotions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spend a lot of time delving into like why it was that way, what could have been, what caused it. I still don't know 100% what caused my pain, whether it was, trauma, whether it was just my body, a UTI that never healed. I don't know. And to be honest, it's not as big a deal for me now because I feel well. So yes, definitely looking at what we need to release, 100%, and looking at our patterns, but also having a really clear picture of what we want to feel and how we want our life to look. Because that, when we are stuck for so long, it can feel like it's impossible to know what life's going to look like. And, if you haven't been working and you have to go back to work, then that's another fear on top of things. So really thinking about how you want life to look and doing as much as work and for the future, as well as like looking into where we need to change things and where we need to let go of things.
Okay, so I just want to ask you a bit more because just the area that you were affected around your genitals. So on an emotional level, that area has a lot to do with sexuality and sexual expression.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have any issues with that, looking back on that now?
No, I would say that was just when I was starting to really feel like, like sexually in a good place, everything. I wouldn't say expression as such, but I think women, how do I put this? Women kind of don't learn a lot about themselves, and we do learn certain ways and how we should act sexually and how we should be and all of that. Nothing comes to mind specifically for me, but I do know a lot of girls in the same position who feel like they don't know enough, who feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of, I shouldn't be, women's sexual health is not talked about, or pleasure is not talked about, anything like that. So, nothing specifically comes up for me, but I think in terms of just being a woman, there is a lot of stuff that we have to keep to ourselves. And yeah.
So what changes have you continued to implement?
Yeah, in terms of just my health in general.
Yeah.
Boundaries is a massive one. Again, especially working with clients, like I always have to put myself first. I get a massage every 2 weeks. Just that's my thing. That's what I love. So just making sure I take time for myself first. And in terms of having gone through this whole health journey, I think, again, putting ourselves first is so important. I know I'm not a mum yet and I haven't had all that experience, but just little things that we can do for ourselves and following our intuition. So in the past, I would have really have done a lot of overthinking about making certain decisions. Now it's really learnt me to trust my gut and just do what I'm not on the same path as anyone else. So doing that, having gone through this, that is something I've taken from it.
Yeah. Well, actually, you've just gone in and described a few things emotionally around the pelvis, which is healthy boundaries in the relationships that we have with our clients or our intimate relationships. And it also houses emotions around desires and wants and to not feel guilty about it as well. And I'm constantly teaching people to be more selfish, even as a mum, to be more selfish and allow yourself space and be okay, even just wanting material things as well, is that you are allowed to have those things and to be able to support yourself, use your intuition, emotional expression, all those sort of things.
Yeah, it's so important. And it took me, a long time to get back in touch with that feminine side of myself. After experiencing pain in that region, it took me quite a while to get back in touch with my body and, through things like yoga, something I do consistently now. But boundaries and just, putting yourself first, I can't emphasize it enough. And even my mum on her journey, like that's the first thing I said, like, right, you've got to let go of everything that's not serving you. Put yourself first, like this is the time. So as a woman, I just think we hold a lot of guilt and blame and doing stuff for others.
How do people work with you?
So my Instagram is neuro.spark, and on Facebook, Neurospark, and I've got my website. On my website, there's a sort of a form that you can fill out. I'll get a direct email, and then I usually give someone a call. If they're dealing with something, we can talk through it and see sort of the best course of action.
What's your website?
www.neurospark.co.nz. Generally, if they're dealing with a chronic condition, I'd always recommend the lightning process. And with that, I link potential clients to a audio download, which is on the lightning process website. And it's about 3 to 4 hours, and they just listen to it. It's all about neuroplasticity, it's targeted to whatever they're dealing with, and about these kind of concepts. And if it resonates, I say, cool, fill out the application form and we'll go from there. But I only take on clients who, again, are really open and ready to do the work. Otherwise, it does make my life a little bit more difficult. So, NLP sessions one-to-one if someone's dealing with just a deeper issue that they need a bit of help with, or if it's something more chronic, it's generally the lightning process.
And is that one-to-one or in groups?
Yeah, so both. Ideally groups with the lightning process, because I just think it's really cool when you can relate to people who are going through, it doesn't have to be the same condition, but just the same sort of feelings. However, I do it one-to-one. If it works for someone's schedule and I'm free, we can organise that too. So I do either for the lightning process, the groups would be sort of 3 to 4 people. And NLP is always one-to-one, and this can be on Zoom or in person as well.
Mm-hmm. And you're based in Christchurch?
Yep, I'm based in Christchurch. However, I do travel. I might be coming to Wanaka soon.
Trying to organise that.
Yeah, we do. And then I go down to Dunedin. I'm going to try and start doing it more frequently. But yeah, in Christchurch at the moment, yeah.
Okay. And do you have any resources that you recommend, or should people just head to your website and then you'll link them up?
Yeah, I would say head to my website or my Instagram. I put a few things on, and then I can send through the stuff. But yeah, there's quite a lot of information on my website about the lightning process specifically, or if anyone's sort of interested in the lightning process and needs more information, there's a lot on YouTube. Phil Parker, who started it, is an osteo as well. So he's done a lot of clinical research into it as well. So there's a lot of stuff out there on the main lightning process website.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Bianca. So I will jump into asking you 6 questions, and I'd love just one word or one sentence, simple answers if you can.
Simple. Okay, let's go.
Okay, what are you grateful for?
Definitely my family at the moment. Being home with my family, I'm really lucky. Living in New Zealand, I mean, totally after travelling, we have such a beautiful country. And a good coffee this morning. Had a great coffee. Just the small things.
What's your favourite book that you would recommend?
Oh, this one you're testing me with. I love all different kinds of books, but I would say, have you ever read Attached?
No.
It's about attachment styles. It's one that I feel like everyone should read. I actually I didn't put down the author, but it's just Attached. It's all what's called, and it's about the 4 different attachment styles. And there's one called Pussy, a bit random, by Regina Thomas Hauer. It's all about woman's sexual pleasure, power. Really good book as well.
Awesome.
Love that one.
Okay.
And of course, The Body Keeps Score, if you've read
Yes, that is really good. I've actually only just started reading it. I'm about halfway through. That author, who I never know how to say his name, Bessel someone?
Oh, Bessel Van
Yeah. Him and Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger, they're just amazing books. And that goes more into the whole freeze state and the need to discharge and rewrite the story. And they've had they've got amazing case studies of quite serious trauma that people have been through. Yeah, no,
it's quite a heavy book to get through, but it's such a good book.
Yeah.
For any practitioners as well, definitely.
Yeah, especially people who are more into the science side of things.
Yeah,
and want proof.
Absolutely.
What's a movie that you would recommend?
Oh, so this one was a hard one because I haven't. I love a good rom-com. Honestly, I love a good rom-com, but I'm more into my Netflix documentaries and series at the moment. So I'll just have to. The Bodyguard. Seen that one? Unorthodox.
No, I flick through it all the time.
Yeah. No, I couldn't pick one. I'm sorry, but rom-coms.
We'll go with The Bodyguard.
Yeah, we'll go with The Bodyguard.
Who's an inspirational person and why?
That would be my mum. Just from how she's gone on her journey so far, you know, she's really, again, it's like putting yourself first, doing things for yourself. And yeah, just she's always been my inspiration, but even more so in the last 6 months. And I would also say anyone that's putting themselves out there and potentially like a trailblazers in their field, because I think it takes a lot to put yourself out there and do something that maybe other people aren't doing. Holistic psychologist on Instagram. I've been following her since she had 20,000 followers, and now she's got about 1.3 million. And just to see like her transformation and her vulnerability, I think is, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, it is. I think that everybody does have a little gift that is to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a shame that there's a sense of guilt or fear of judgment and criticism that stops people putting themselves out there.
Yeah, and we all have it to a degree as well, but the people that work through it, you know, it's reminding ourselves that there's always something, we're all on our own journey, and just to keep pushing through the fear.
You can help us NLP it out of ourselves.
Yeah, I can try. NLP myself too. Yeah.
What is something that you think everyone should try?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you haven't travelled, just to explore. I love travelling. I know it might not be for everyone though, but just experiencing new things, it brings such a joy to, like, that is what I love. Visualization, 5 minutes a day, waking up to see how you want to feel during the day. I try, most mornings I do this. I just see my day plan out in my head, how I'm going to feel, you know, how I want to look by the end of the day, having accomplished everything. It's a really powerful way to prime your brain. And it's pretty easy. It doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah, great. What belief do you think people could embrace to live a more fulfilled life?
So many there.
I'll give you a few.
Yeah, thank you. Life is simple, which I know it's not. You know, life isn't simple. There's so much stuff that happens along the way. But
some people say it's simple but not easy.
Yeah, true. But by taking on the belief that it can be simple or, you know, figure outable, I think things do become more clear and more simple. So I try and take that on even in the midst of, you know, the difficult times. The relationship that we have with ourselves is the most important one we'll have. So, you know, just learning to value yourself and you are good enough is just a core belief I think we all need to work on. And that no feeling is final. You know, nothing will last or stay forever. So just keeping that in the back of your mind, and yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome. Love chatting.
Oh, I think you're just a wealth of information, and I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing with yourself over these coming years.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Pain Story interview on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. Anything shared during this episode is for information only. It does not replace professional advice from a healthcare practitioner. If you are experiencing pain, injury, or illness, seek advice that is catered to your individual needs. Thanks for learning with me on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. If you like what you've heard, I would love if you could rate, review, and share with your friends. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is The Art of Listening to Your Body. You can join my free Facebook group where I go live regularly to teach you about different conditions and the deeper underlying emotions at play.